for me to welcome everyone here, and specifically to the members of the Canadian Chamber who've also joined us this afternoon. Thank you very much for participating, and then also to a number of our clients who've also made themselves available for this afternoon, and then to all of you who are new to meeting DPI, and we're certainly looking forward to this afternoon's discussion. I don't want to have a monologue today. I want to try and encourage you guys to be part of the conversation. So either use the chat facility or raise your hand. I know that facility, if I remember correctly, is in the chat area. You should be able to raise your hand somewhere. I can't see it right now for that, but the chat facility is available. I will keep the chat open on my side so that I can see if somebody has something to say or a question to ask. So I'll keep that open. So really, it's about what keeping you guys awake at night around risk, revenue, and reputation. Because right now we're having to deal with quite a lot of things in terms of managing our business. And so make sure that this is working. So we need to ensure that we either have a good insurance policy in place to drive sustainable growth, or are we going to be attending our corporate funerals as we go forward. And we've seen unfortunately, a number of organizations that have unfortunately closed over the last 18 months as a result of the business conditions that are out there. So if we look at beyond 2021, and everyone's trying to predict sort of when are we going to get out of this COVID stage 3, stage 2, stage 1, and really get back into the swing of things from a business perspective. And I think we've all realized that when the president said, we're going to be down for the next 3 weeks and then we'll get back to normal, that really hasn't happened. So it's one of those things that we have to deal with. It's one of the balls that we need to have in the air, over and above all the others that we've had to deal with prior to the pandemic coming in. Changing regulations and policies and legislation, the hunt for talent, and even more so today, as unfortunately we've lost people either through retirement or through them passing on. We need to make sure that we've got the right people in our businesses. The malaise of the economy. I heard some numbers today that it seems like we sort of grown on the in sort of the first part of the third quarter. Even though the first quarter we were up over R1 trillion, and then we came down to 900 million, and now we're back up to over R1 trillion. It's still slow. I think it's not really what we as business leaders are looking for. And then this technology wonderland, which we've unfortunately been thrust into over the last year, trying to manage our businesses and off-site working, and now we're in the debate of, do we have a hybrid model, and who knows what's going to happen there. Rising stakeholder activism. I think there's still this need for shareholders and stakeholders to see relevance from organizations and doing the right stuff. And then the drive for growth. It was interesting. I spoke to one of you in the room a little while ago when you were busy with your sort of financial year end. And, you said, well, we sort of okay. You sort of did what we did in the previous year, but, I don't think we can do that again. The shareholders are going to look for a little bit more from us over the next 12 months. So that need for us to find the opportunities for growth still continues. And then, pandemics are there. I think that's one of the new things that we've got to put into this management of the balls as we try and navigate our way through this chaos. If it's not COVID, we're talking about swine flu, bird flu, whatever else is looking to hit us as we go forward. So, yeah, these are the things that unfortunately as CEOs and MDs and FDs we have to work with on an ongoing basis, and it's making life more complex. Not to say that we've never had dealt with complexity, but it just adds more to what we have to do on a day-to-day basis. And the real question is, how do we think about all of this stuff and come out with some clear ways forward for our organization? There's a number of questions that we need to ask. How do we, in today's environment, instill and solidify our business culture? Because we're not in the office. How do we deal with our people? How do we make sure that they understand what our ethos is, what our philosophies are, so that they can meet the needs of our clients? Recently, somebody also said to me, we've lost spontaneity. Because it's not possible for us to walk down the corridor and quickly pop into somebody's office and say, I just had this great idea. What do you think about this? And sometimes, we're able to say, yeah, not such a good idea because of this, or hey, yeah, let's investigate that further. Now we've got to phone someone and see if they're available and, set up a Zoom call. And, by the time that's all set up, we've lost that ability to be spontaneous and to get things going as we move forward. So it's going to impact us. I believe we're going to have a major HR issue with our people going forward, not just from the impacts of COVID, but this whole inability to connect with other people within the organization and so forth. We certainly need to change the way we work, and we have done a lot of that patchwork in terms of making sure that people can get onto our systems and still be able to operate and so forth. But as we move forward, we have to rethink how our operating models are going to need to be really changed at a strategic level. And it was interesting that Ian Huntley said earlier that a lot of their customer processes that they're finding, their processes have to change. Their processes have to take into account that we're no longer on a central system. We're having to come in via local area networks and access the systems and so forth. So that in itself creates complexity. As I said earlier, how are we going to engage our employees in the future? Because yes, we can do it via Zoom. But again, I got a lot of feedback from CEOs that I've been talking to that it's not all that good, because all we see, as we see now, are just people's lovely pictures. And it's difficult for us to really have, if we like today, 17 odd people in the room, to have everyone on video, because bandwidth's an issue and things slow down and so forth. But yeah, these are things that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But we have to think about getting that chutzpah, if I can call it that, in terms of, yes, this is who we are. I work for such and such a business, and this is how we're going to go to market, and this is how we're going to get our customers and service them and so forth. So it's something we got to think about. How do our sales processes need to change? Interesting that I think Stein said it's, how do we close these deals? We can't just fly to London and get stuff done with either our suppliers or our customers, and it's making it a lot more difficult for us to get these things done. I know I was speaking to my nephew over the weekend, and he's in the steel industry, and they do a lot of selling of steel, and he was saying to me, it's just so difficult, when you do have a customer on a Zoom call, and maybe 5-10 minutes into the call and the discussion, the client says, "Oh, sorry, I've got to go. I've got an important something," and that sale is lost, or we got to get back to the sale. So how do we deal with these things? Similarly to our supply chains, some of our suppliers may have closed down. Some of our suppliers may be also struggling with how do they deal with you as their customer and ensuring that they are meeting the demands that are out there. So how does this future that we're moving into impact? And then how do we continue to offer our world-class service and ensure that we have customer satisfaction, that customers stay with us as we move forward? So lots of things that we have to think about, lots of things that we have to put into a melting pot and shake it around and hopefully come up with the answer as to how we, when I say we as your organization, how are you wanting to take the business forward strategically? So the real question that I have around this is, have you really bottomed out the key issues in your business to ensure your success? What are some of the things that you still need to address, and from a people side, from a system side, from an approach side, that makes you successful and ensure that you will be successful. And then the same thing is true, or the same question is true in terms of the key issues in your market, to make sure that you can drive that transformational growth that you're looking for. So we need to put together a winning strategy, and a winning strategy that we've seen with our clients over the last 38 years that DPI has been operating globally is it will always deliver sustainable and exceptional growth. And it is our quest as the leaders of organizations to ensure that we have that winning strategy in place. And what we've seen, having engaged with clients around the world, from large corporates, listed companies, to small entrepreneurs, is that winning strategy already exists in the heads of the people in the organization. We've just got to get it out of their heads and to get it on the table and to start working with that as we move forward. So really today's agenda, just to sort of set the scene, today's agenda, really all I want to do is to just give you a quick update on about DPI, the outcomes of an assignment, and then overall how do you approach this thing? How do you make sure that you get good critical thinking into your management team, that you're able to ask all the right questions and formulate your answers to those questions so that you can say, yes, we've done it and we've thought about it and we can move forward. So a little bit about DPI. What differentiates us from traditional consultants out there, our peers, is we bring simple, structured, rigorous critical thinking methodologies or processes to the table when we work with a client, and it makes good use of the know-how of your management team. We download that information through our process, and there's no place to hide, if I can say that. And because of that, you're able to have all the right information, experience, and expertise to be able to move forward and navigate through the process. It's all about pure and simple. That's our mantra. So we take complexity and make it pure and simple. We remove that. And it's important because as executives and business leaders, you are managing critical decisions every day. No matter what that meeting is that you are getting your people to join and the discussions that you're having, somewhere along the line you are managing a critical decision to mitigate risk of doing it wrong, risk of messing it up. And in order to do that, in order to mitigate risk, you've got to have choices, because an answer of one is not a choice. It's something that we're forcing on the organization. So we need to say, well, what are the options for us? How can we get this done? And the real key reason why we got to do that is around resource allocation. Yes, we've heard a lot of organizations are sitting with huge bank accounts, sitting with money invested, and they can access that money and invest it in their businesses and so forth. But it's not an ongoing source of funds that are available. So we've got to make sure that when we make these critical decisions, we're making the right decisions around either preserving resources or investing resources in the right areas to drive that growth going forward. And the second key area that we got to make sure we're doing it right is the opportunity selection for us in terms of doing the right stuff in our business. if we don't know what those things are, we lose out to somebody else that does it before us, or we need to get out there and find the new opportunities. We've got to be the game changers. We've got to be the bashers, of the new path of how our business is going to operate in the markets out there. Now, in order to do that, what we need to be able to do is to go take all of this information, experience, and expertise and put it through a judgment process. And that's really where our process comes in, to enable that judgment process. So that it's a building block that you're going through, and you get to make the best balanced choice. You're never 100% right. You're never 100% right. But you know what? If you're 80% right, better than what you were, you can manage the 20% risk that decision may cause within your business. It's much better than being 20% right and trying to manage 80% of the issue. So how do organizations think when there's major changes in their business arena? And I think if you just think about our market, the major changes, forget about COVID and the impact of the pandemic. There were major issues prior to that was changing our business environment. And what we find in terms of these two key areas around resource allocation and opportunity selection, the first thing people do is they go and write a plan. Yes, this is how we're going to react to this thing. And we go and we put a plan together and we start implementing. And it doesn't always go as well as we expected. And then we wonder why. Why does it not go as well as we expected? Well, the key reason is what we didn't do was to stand back and to ask ourselves, what in our destination? Because what we've seen over all the years of working with clients, you've got a core strategy. And 80% what you're doing is what the business's mandate is and why it was formed, or its vision and mission, or call it whatever those wonderful words are that you guys use. But it's the 20% that we need to say, how does this impact? What do we need to change? What do we need to do differently? And what is that end destination that we then need to agree to and have everyone agree to it? Not just the top 3 guys or the top 4 guys. Your management team, what I call the leadership in your business, needs to agree that destination. And then let's agree the journey, because the journey is the plan. How are we going to get there? And it needs to be a prioritized journey. We need to do this, then that, then that, then that, then that. We can't do everything at once because, again, we don't have the resources to be able to do that. And really what our clients say to us is that these critical thinking processes that we bring to the table help them to transform their business over time and help them in terms of the way they conduct their business. So if I think about, what is it that we offer, obviously in the area of helping you to make sure that you've got a game-changing strategy in place, that in itself has clear implementation plans as to what it is that we need to do. Change management needs to be done around that so that you have everyone in your organization part of that change in terms of the direction that you're looking to take. And there's some skills development that takes place, because all of a sudden people learn through our process, this is the way I have to think about these things. This is the way we approach this. It's not just haphazard all over the place. There's some method behind the madness. And that's really what I'd like to talk about today, is that strategic thinking methodology and what it is that you need to do. We're also in the area of innovation, and there's been a lot of talk about innovation and organizations having to innovate in this time. But are we really innovating? We have it as corporate values, but have we really instilled innovation as a methodology, a process, a way of doing in our company, that everyone in the business is measured against innovation and is rewarded against innovation? And that's something that we also do to help a client. We've obviously got to think about sustainability and our impact on Mother Earth and nature. So in our drive to drive our strategy, how are we going to do that in the best possible way with the least impact from sustainability perspective. And then when it comes to IT systems and strategic information management, that's an area I know a lot of organizations are struggling with at the moment, is to make sure that they've got the right IT strategy, the right methodologies in place to manage all of this information. And I've heard some exciting stories from some of you in the room in terms of some of the things that you can achieve already from that perspective. And then on a day-to-day basis, our people need to manage the situations that occur when executing the strategy. And do we have a common language in our business that helps us to manage problems, make the right decisions, and execute the plans? And we have the methodology there, situation management, gives people that toolbox and reinvigorates that toolbox in the organization from that perspective. So that's some of the other stuff that we do, but I really just want to focus on strategic thinking today and what we need to do. We're a network of partners around the world, and our office is is looking after the African market for the larger global market. So, is this what we want? Do we want to see our name here? A couple of companies that are well known, that are struggling and had a bit of a death in their in their past. Some are actually gone. I don't want to get into the details, but if we look at 2021 and beyond, are we going to be in control of what we're going to do, or are we going to abdicate to somebody else to show us the way, and really eat at the tail, the tailcoats of what they're doing and following them? Michel Robert, who was the founder of DPI and a prolific author, said that one of the things is that copying is not the best form of strategy. What it does is if you're copying somebody else, it says to them, you're doing well. So keep doing it, we'll keep following you. And we don't really think that's the right way to do it. So growth is a given. As I said in the opening, we are under pressure to grow, but it's not always evident where we're gonna find that growth going forward. And are we planning to be incremental over the next 2 or 3 years, ride out this this pandemic and the current situation that we're in, or are we really going to get out there and find the transformational growth that our organization needs going forward? So we can launch new products and services. I've already seen a lot of new things that have come out from clients or from companies that are doing stuff. There's new clients available because people have unfortunately closed down, or there's mergers and acquisitions that are happening, because that's another way of growth, and clients may not like that new animal and looking for somebody else to get out there. We can also expand geographically and from a growth perspective as we move forward. Now, one of the things that we have found is that in order to get to this ability to achieve growth, there's got to be some fundamental things in place in your organization, and we call that the growth grid. It becomes the skeleton of your business, the backbone of what your business is built on. And there are a couple of areas. One, you've got to have a very clear strategy that's understood. You've got to have clear action plans, prioritized, assigned to people in the organization that are responsible, and resource those plans. Make sure that you have the right resources. You've got to have your senior management teams buy in to the strategy and the action plans. And you've got to make sure that you've got the skills in the business to be able to execute. It's got to be driven by incentives. We know, if you can't measure, it's not going to happen. And then we've got to ensure that we have the governance structures in place so that we allow people to operate, but they operate within the agreed frameworks. And if all of those things are in place, growth will happen. But what happens if some of these things are missing? So if we don't have a strategy, we're going to have confusion in the business because nobody knows where we're going. We're going to try this, try that, and all we're doing is wasting time and effort. So we've got to make sure that there's a clear strategy. If we have no action plan, we're going to have false starts, because I've seen that so many times where people go, I thought we should have done this. No, but we're going to be doing this now, and then we start and we stop and we start and we stop, and we really don't get traction going forward. If we don't have the resources in the business, we have frustration, because now all of a sudden we've got to do more with less. And I've already seen that happening with people, either people having passed on or people resigned, and we're not employing more people, and all of a sudden those who are left have to take on more to get stuff done. So there's a balance when it comes to resources, but we got to make sure that we resource what it is that we're trying to do, and we resource in the right areas, and we get the skills to be able to do that. If we don't have senior management's buy-in, we have stagnation. I call those who don't buy into what it is that the company wants to achieve the terrorists in the business. As managers, I have seen that we are very good at not doing what we don't believe in. We will find all the reasons why somebody else was responsible for us not having delivered against our KPIs or whatever the case may be. We find those reasons. And it's not because those people didn't do it, it's because I didn't believe and I didn't put my weight behind that. If we don't have the skills, we're having anxiety, because all of a sudden, we're going to go solar power, and we don't have the skills for that, and there's anxiety in the business. Where are we going to get those skills? Or we're going to go to a new market, and we don't really know the market. We don't have the skills for those people, and we get anxious. So we need to get rid of that anxiety in the business. If we don't have incentives, we have slow growth, because we're not really pushing towards what we're incentivizing the people for. Way back in my F&B career, when I was head of strategy for the property cluster in FirstRand, one of our business units was making a loss, and when we talk loss, we at that point it was about a 350 million rand loss. And we had a big brother, and it was covered on the income statement and financials and so forth. And we said, no, we got to turn this place around. We've really got to get this business to turn around. And we started incentivizing in the right places, and we started in making sure that people at the lowest level in the business, there was incentive for them to achieve what it was that they needed to do. And it was amazing. 18 months later, they made a 250 million rand profit for FirstRand. And it was exciting. There was an excitement in the business because of those incentives that were in place. And if we don't have the governance structures in place, we have slippage. And we've seen so many examples of where people have not followed the right governance structures, and all of a sudden we've got into a sticky situation and a bit of a mess, and then we have to clean it up, and then we have internal focus as opposed to the external focus, and so forth. So these are the key elements that we must ensure as we move through our strategic thinking. How do we make sure that all of this stuff is in place so that we can grow as an organization? So it's all about seeing the big picture, and to see where are the dongers, where the opportunities for us to do things. I've lost network connection. Am I back? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Then you did go away for a bit.
I missed you for a few seconds, Greg.
Yeah. I sort of lost connection. I'm not sure why, but anyway, that's the challenges of technology when we in this sort of environment. Okay, so I was talking about the big picture. That we need to be able to see the terrain and where the opportunities are for us to go this way and not that way, to make our life easier, because doing business is tough, but it doesn't have to be that tough. It needs to be fun. Okay, right, let's just see if we can get this working again. There we go. Oh, man. Right.
Greg, you might try switch your camera off while you present it. Might just
Okay.
help.
Let's see if that works. Thanks, Pete. Okay. Let's see if that helps. Okay. So one of the things that we do know is that you guys do go away for your strat planning sessions. And this is something that was put together by CEOs at our traditional breakfast that we had prior to COVID, where we had a networking session and so forth. And this was sort of the agenda that they came up with in terms of their 3-day breakaway. You know, we'd have an opening and a welcome and a motivational speaker and some insights into strategy and a SWAT international. You know, we go for a game drive and you guys know how these things work. But what we know is that's not really a good way to put together a strategy. What happens out of those sessions is either we set up a task force to go and do some stuff, or we engage with some external experts, and hopefully we get the right answers. But really what we're saying is what you as an organization need to do with your senior management team is to take ownership and design your own dream home. Don't outsource it to someone else. Take ownership and live that decision that you make every single day and you know, manage it as you go forward, because that ensures that you put together your insurance policy for sustainable growth and you take yourself out of having to rest in peace as you move forward. So some of the deadly mindsets that do impact us in terms of strategic thinking is that we're in the short-term mode, not the long-term mode. You know, I've heard a lot of people saying, "Oh no, we can't think beyond 2022 right now. You know, we just need to get ourselves out of this hole that we're in." And so most of the resources are devoted to that day-to-day business, and not many resources are available to implement new stuff as we go forward. Being a referee and a participant as the CEO of the organization, it's another difficulty, because you're trying to manage this process that you're looking to get some success out of, but you also want to participate in a way that you're not seeing to be overpowering in these sessions. And then is there real focus? You know, with all the technology that we have today, you know, we have other stuff that we may be looking at the phone under the counter or under the table or whatever the thing may be, or I'm not really interested in this discussion right now, so let me just switch off and catch a nod or two. And that's really where you need a facilitator that facilitates that session, a facilitator that has no connection to your organization, has no, if it doesn't happen, it's not really an issue. Doesn't mean to say that we as facilitators abdicate what happens out there, but it allows us to manage the methodology, the process that we're walking you through, and to challenge you. You know, as I said, I worked for FMB, and many times we went to these 3-day conferences, and before we even got to the conference, we already made decisions about, let's not discuss this, or don't raise this issue, you know, or somebody's going to fly off the handle. So there was already a predetermined, this is what will happen at the session, you know, and do we really get down to discussing the important stuff? So our challenge to you is to challenge your old ways of thinking and doing, and to really sit down and go through a methodology that really challenges you, and to come up with the right answers for your business going forward. And so really, just to say it again, we bring that proven process. These processes, yeah, academia have had their inputs in it, but they've been tested in the war rooms of companies around the world. So they're proven, and they're structured, they're disciplined, they're rigorous, and they focus you on the right stuff at the right time so that you can have the right strategic thinking discussions. So what we say, it's our process, it's the client content, but most importantly, it's of the people, by the people, and through the people. And you remain the owner of what it is that comes out of a session with us. Okay, so the outcomes of the assignment is actually very simple. The first thing is to get a clear, agreed, and inspiring future strategic profile in place that everyone says, yes, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of this mission. and then explicit and complete and measurable set of critical issues and action plans. Identify what are the things that we have to fix and put the action plan together, prioritize, and get it done and measure and get report back as we move forward. So that's simple. So what's the overall how? The biggest obstacle, and I did mention some of the other obstacles a bit earlier, but the biggest obstacle that we find is this operational bias and the way that executives see the business from their eyes. You know, the financial director will get up and, apologies to those financial directors in the room, but you guys may say, you know what, if it wasn't for me my team collecting the money and making sure that we manage payments and so forth, there wouldn't be money for us to do anything. And the sales guy would say, well, you know what, if it wasn't for me and my team going out there and selling to the client, we wouldn't get any money in, and so on and so forth. You can see how this goes. So we bring our own little view into these discussions, and sometimes, it gets a bit heated in the debates and the discussions. So what we see is high-performing companies, organizations think what and then how. So the first thing is that they get this clear picture of what their desired aspirational strategic outcome needs to be, and then how are we going to make that happen? What are the plans? How do we drive that into the operations, and how do we put that together in the annual budgets and annual plans that go to the shareholders and so forth? There's a couple of key principles that you need to think about in these sessions. One is how do we get control of the game? Because we are playing a game out there, and there's a number of players, and like in a football or rugby or hockey game, there are rules. But who controls the game? Is it us or somebody else? And therefore, once we figure that out, we've got to make some conscious choices as to how we're going to go forward. We've got to leverage the cohesion within our business, within our partners, so that we work together, and through that, at the same time, we've got to unleash creativity. And we can get that mix right, then we A for away. Then we're going to fly as we go forward and put that winning strategy together. And that winning strategy needs to ensure that you consistently outperform your peers in the good times and the not so good times. You need to create, that strategy needs to create the ability where you can control a space in the sandbox that you can say, this is our sandbox and we own this. You need to dictate the pace of innovation within that sandbox. So you need to be the innovator. You can't wait for somebody else, because then they're going to take over control. And then you've got to be disciplined in terms of the execution and supported by your excellent operational frameworks and skills. And yeah, it's challenging right now. It's challenging right now because we've got to rethink our processes and how we do things. But we've got to get there. But what we really need to challenge, guys, is the attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, norms, and practices in the business. That's what we really have to challenge. Yes, we have an enemy out there, but our biggest enemy is sitting inside our business. I spoke about the strategic terrorists earlier, because we have our own attitudes about issues in our business, the way we behave, the beliefs we've developed over times, and the norms and practices that we follow on a day-to-day basis. But there are also external forces that we've got to be cognizant of, and how we've reacted in the last 18 months. But our biggest external force that we've got to avoid impacting our business is our customer. They must not dictate how we need to run our business. They're not in our business. So, but we've obviously got to be cognizant of what their needs are and so forth, and how they've changed, how they're changing their buying habits and so forth. But yeah, we must use that information, but don't let them dictate to us how things need to go. So let's get back to this agreeing the destination that I spoke about earlier. The first thing that we need to do, guys, is we've got to be Superman. We've got to understand our DNA and what are the things that can be our kryptonite that's going to cause us to fail. So what's the DNA of our strategy? Because if we figure that out, it's the key determinant to our future products, customers, and market choices. It's the anchor of cohesion in our business, and it enables exploration of creative and transformational strategic options. Now, what am I talking about? What the hell is this DNA? So what is the DNA of strategy? It's a concept that we use with our clients, and I can say this up front, and I know there's a couple of you in our business, is this is not an easy concept to wrap your head around. So what is the DNA of strategy? As I said, it's the route to the price, customers, and markets. It determines the areas of excellence, your strategic skills that you have to develop to extend and defend the gap between you and your competitors. It's the foundation of how you compete and grow, and it provides clarity on how you allocate those very, very essential resources that you have access to. So what are the 10 components that make up driving force? Well, there's technology or know-how. Technology would be some form of scientific technology. Know-how is intellectual property. We all use resources of some form, and specifically we're talking about natural resources. We all have our production or admin facilities that have capacity or capability, and we produce products or services, which we then have to market and sell and distribute to customers that are users and customers who are in a specific market that's out there. So it could either be an industry market or geographic market. And we generate size, growth, and return profit. So every single company has these 10 elements. But one of them is the driving force of the strategy and the decisions that you make to find transformational growth and to resource that growth going forward. And it determines the look of your organization in terms of where you're going to spend time, money, and effort and where you're not. And I can tell you now, in the over 300 projects that I've run, not only in South Africa, but in the US, the UK, and in Singapore, the less emphasis, where do we need to stop doing things, is one of the most difficult decisions for executives to get their head around. To stop doing things. Because it impacts these two decisions, the allocation of resources and the choosing of opportunities. Guys, I cannot say this more often than I have already today. It's managing risk and the risk of failure in these two areas. So let me give you a quick couple of examples. I'm not going to do all of them because we don't have a lot of time. So the products and services, if you're a product-driven organization, your mantra is that we will base our entire strategy on a specific product or service. And the way we will grow will be modifications, extensions, or enhancements of that product. And the product that we've rooted our entire strategy in is the product that is genetically extrapolated from something that we did very early in life. You know, and if I talk about the insurance company, as a number of you in here, insurance is insurance is insurance. You're still doing insurance. But you're doing things a little bit differently. The type of insurance that you're offering is different. The type of client that you're going after is different, and so forth. So a clear example here would be Rolex. They into the timepieces market where they give really high value, good quality watches, unless you go to China and get the knockoffs. But that's what they are. And many, many years ago, it was about the late 70s, there was a change in the industry when it came to timepieces. And for the first time, digital watches came in, Casio, if you recall. And they needed to make this decision on this new technology that was coming in. And I can tell you now, they sweated around that in terms of saying, do we do it? Don't we do it? Do we go forward? And the final decision was, no, we're going to stick with timepieces that are well-crafted, good, high quality, and they're going to go into a premium market. And people are going to want to love to aspire to get our watches. And, you know, the Rolex story is the Rolex story. We know where that's gone. Now, you can have a very different approach if you say, well, maybe my strategy should be a user or customer class driven strategy. And it's not to say that product's not important, but product from a decision perspective is secondary in nature. Where in a product driven strategy, it's all about best product wins, and I own the R&D to that product. Yeah, these guys are a little bit different. Say, no. First, what we need to do is understand the needs of the customer and then respond with the product. And the best example here is J&J. General Johnson wrote the 240 words in terms of what their business was way back in 1938. And the strategy is quite simple. J&J focuses on doctors, patients, nurses, and mothers. And the generic need that they respond to on a globally every single day is health and wellness, healthcare and wellness. And they come up with a whole host of different products that meet the needs of that end user. They're even into the surgical equipment that goes into hospitals that doctors will use in surgeries and so forth and so forth. And that was their strategy until 2012. And I recall sitting in Cape Town in the J&J office with the CEO, who unfortunately has passed on. And I said to him, yeah, I'm just going to make sure that I'm quoting this right. And he said, no, you're 100% right. But we've just changed our strategy. And I went, oh, okay. What have you changed? He says, no, well, it's still doctors, patients, nurses, and mothers. But now we're also focusing on fathers. Because we're seeing a new trend. And it's still health and wellness, still the same thing. But what we're seeing now is a lot more fathers becoming involved in raising the kids, or single fathers through divorce. And we need to be able to talk to those guys. And so different marketing methods, different ways that they were talking to us as men. And then recently we saw them add a new product. Because they have two questions that they ask themselves when they look at their strategic filter. The first question is, does it meet the need of a doctor, patient, nurse, mother, or father? And is it healthcare related? And if the answer is yes, yes, they go for it. And hence, we now have them with the COVID vaccine. Because again, it's important for them to ensure that their customer, they're able to meet the needs of their customer. And what did we see when there was an issue with their vaccine? They pulled it off the market and made sure that they get it right, because they will never ever put their customers at risk. So it was a very easy decision for them to say, let's pull the COVID product, let's make sure it's right, and then bring it back into the market at the right time. Okay, market category-driven strategy also focuses on the needs, but instead of the needs of a specific customer, they focus on the needs of a market. And a quick example here is a company called Cardinal Health, and their market is hospitals. And they focus on the needs of a hospital and respond to not all, but some of the needs that hospital may have. And in this case, they're looking at equipment and disposable items and so forth that gets used in the hospital. Netcare, very good example of this in South Africa. But they actually go and build the hospital. They do everything in the hospital. They do the reception, they do the accounts, they manage doctors' rooms and so forth and so forth. Technology-driven organizations are rooted in a specific hard technology or know-how, IP. So on the IP side, you would find your attorney firms, your accounting firms, because they build that know-how, your auditing firms and so forth. And technology, hard technology guys, if you think about Canon, their whole single use of photography or photography type systems to do photocopying and cameras, etc., etc. Excuse me. Production capacity driven organizations are the 24/7, 365 sweat that asset. So if you think about a console glass, you've got to sweat that asset to make that glass. And they really struggled in COVID when the liquor industry closed, and they had to come up with some very innovative ways to keep production going, because you can't just turn off a furnace. That thing explodes when it gets cold. Production capability, guys, is where we have different capabilities of doing things. And every time we do a sale, we try and sell as many of the capabilities that we've built in our organization. So if you think about high secure printing, whether it's printing of we don't have bank checks anymore, but if you think about your credit cards, there's high security involved in getting that card together with all its features, and now we can tap and all of the other stuff in terms of making payments and so forth. But it's those capabilities that we have built in the business that we try and use to sell the product or service to the customer. Sales and marketing driven strategies are really companies that have rooted their strategy in a sales and marketing method. So if you think about Amway, Tupperware, Golden Products, I can name a few there. Distribution driven companies is really where they've put their entire strategy in their distribution method. So FedEx will move anything for anyone anywhere in the world within 24 hours, and they are on time 96% of the time because of that ownership of the distribution method that they have. Natural resource driven companies have to have access to natural resources, otherwise we don't have a business. So your water utilities, oil companies, forestry businesses, and so forth. I know there's one of our clients in the room right now that was struggling with some product because of the Knysna fires, and it's an issue. Where else do we get our product from, and so forth. So they had to do some couple of interesting dancing maneuvers to ensure that they can secure their product. And then finally, size, growth, and return profit. Now, for most organizations, this is not the driving force. It's the outcome, because it's difficult for you to arrive at the office today and say, today my strategy is to make a profit. But this is where you find the corporate conglomerates, the Bidvests that own over 3,500 companies in South Africa, Bidvest Steiner and Bidvest this, Bidvest that. Each company is their own business, and all Bidvest is trying to do is to manage that portfolio of businesses. Berkshire Hathaway, another good example of that. So it's important that you have this discussion of what really is our driving force, and do we understand what it is today, and should that still be the driving force going forward into the future. So all 10 elements or all 10 components are within that business, and it's important, and we do it very quickly to help the business understand what is their current driving force. And then the question is, should that be our future driving force, or do we need to make a change? Because if we make a change, it impacts our strategic profile in terms of the products and services we need to focus on and bring into the portfolio, as well as those that we need to discard. So 3M is a good example here. Way back just after the Second World War, when markets opened, 3M executives sat in a room and they had a discussion about their future. And one group of executives stood up and said, we know a lot about tapes, and more tapes. And we can do a hell of a lot with tapes. We're only in North America, and we can go, the world is our oyster. Markets are opening, and we can sell tapes around the world. And another group of guys stood up and said, yeah, that's true, but what we do know a hell of a lot about is polymer chemistry, making stuff stick. So a tape business is a product-driven strategy. It's tapes, and more tapes, whether it's insulation tape or masking tape or whatever, different tapes. And when we look at technology as polymer chemistry, it's what else can we make stick together? And so if they went down the product route, they would have just leveraged that the different tapes and grown. Now, would they have grown to the level of organization that they are today? Well, hindsight's always best. And what we know now is they have over 55,000 products that they offer in every single industry, whether it's medical, aviation, manufacturing, whatever that is. They have a product that goes into that industry. And I've had the fortune to and the honor to work with 3M in Southern Africa. So know a little bit more about their business from that perspective. So we need to ensure that we identify that sandbox. Where do we want to play? Well, how are we going to control it? The choice of where we wish to compete and win, and set the creative rules to change the game. So what is the space we want to play in? And I know this is a big question in a number of organizations, in that we may have drifted into spaces that are not as profitable or as exciting as we thought they were. And maybe we should get out of those spaces and bring our focus back to really where our core business is. And focus on that space and be the best in that space. Well, that's what you need to discuss. That's what you need to agree. And then once you've made that decision, then what are the rules as to how the game in that space is going to be driven by? What are the practices, the new attitudes, the new beliefs? Because we must be the game changer. We must be the guys that set the rules in that space that we've decided upon. Now, very importantly, no matter what decision we make on driving force, and driving force will assist with some of the stuff that I've spoken to before, there's certain givens in our business, in our markets. Quality and customer service and cost management and profitability and sensitivity to customers and broad-based economic empowerment and. Every industry has its givens. And it's interesting when we're sitting in these debates and somebody go, yeah, but guys, that's a given. Okay, well, the unfortunate word is that word given, because it suggests that we have it in place. And what we say to our customers, if the givens in your market are not within your business and you're not doing them well, best sort those out fast. Because if one of your competitors figures out that you don't have that specific element in your business, they're going to come after you and they're going to exploit the fact that you don't have it. So the real question is, once we get the givens in place, what takes us beyond the givens and gives us that strategic advantage against competitors? Well, how do we amplify the gap of supremacy in our market space? Well, there are 4 ways that we help a client to do that. I said earlier that driving force allows you to identify your strategic skills or areas of excellence. We need to decode the future today. And when I talk about future, I'm not talking about next year. Yeah, I'm talking about 5 to 7 years from now, guys. We've got to get our binoculars out and we need to look in the future. Because here's the thing. The trends that are driving our industry are already in existence in our industry today. And we need to understand what those trends are and how they're going to shape our future. So we need to get that trend analysis done. We need to find ways to change the game, as I've just said earlier. And then we need to manage a competitive strategy to our advantage. So areas of excellence, if there are 10 areas of driving force and then you add just 2 strategic skills, you don't have the resources to be better than anyone else in 20 areas. Know what your driving force is and know what the 2 areas of excellence are that you have to be better at than anything else that you do in your business, and strive to be better than your competition out there, because that's what's going to help you drive growth going forward. Decoding the future today, we've got to get, as I said, we've got to get those thinking caps on, and we've got to start to think about what are those trends that are going to drive our business going forward. Finding ways to change the game, this is really where we start thinking as a disruptor, and we've seen lots of disruption happening in markets prior to the biggest disruptor right now, which is the pandemic. But really, this is saying, can we put our business out of business? And how would we do that? If we had a blank sheet of paper, how would we put our business out of business? And some of you guys would say, yeah, but that's quite easy. We just do this and we'd be out of business. But difficulties is there, that we need to think about these things. And how could somebody actually come in and cripple our business? Or even so, if we're going to go to a new market, do we want to enter that new market the same way we're doing business now? Or is there an opportunity for us to enter that new market doing things very differently and setting the new rules of the game and challenging the current players in that market? So that's really what our disruptive thinking methodology, which is part of the strategic thinking process, does. So it's about disrupting yourself before somebody else does it to you. And a lot of guys are thinking about this at the moment. And then managing your competitor strategy to your advantage. I'm nearly done, just from a timing perspective. You should be in control of influencing the terms of play in your competitive sandbox. That's what a successful strategy should do. You should choose your competitors and not have them choose you. And then finally, you should manage their strategy to your advantage. Now, one of my clients is in the market and in this presentation today, and they manage their competitor strategy very, very well. And I'm not gonna go out of it, but that's the ability that thinking these things through gives you to be able to do that in the market space out there. So it's about out thinking, not out muscling. It's not about the muscle, guys. And we've seen our small guys have come in and have changed the world out there. So when we look at and we start to analyze how companies do things, they for their 3-day sessions, they look at a little bit as is. They look at the external environment, try and get a couple of things out there. They do a SWOT analysis, and then we do an action plan. But we must asking the question: should we change our strategy? Should we change track? And that's really where our process comes in terms of saying we do an analysis on our very first day of the 3 days. We look at the current profile of the business, current business model. How does that model work? What's working? What's not working? What's the current sandbox look like? Who's the players? What's the flow? I call it the food chain. What's the rules of the game today as it is? We look at the future business arena, not in the next 2 years, in the next 5 to 7 years, and how do we see what that looks like? And then we look at all the strategic variables, not just the SWOT analysis. Where have we been successful and less successful? What's our competition look like? What's their strengths and their weaknesses? Where's new competition going to come from? What are the vulnerabilities or risks in our market that our business could face? So there's a whole host of analysis, and that sets the foundation for us then to, on day 2, to stand back and say, right, let's have this discussion on driving force. And these are where we create the options for a better risk mitigation decision for us to go forward with. And what are those driving forces that can work for us? So we go through a process of talking about each of the 10 and kicking those out that it's just not us. It's just not what our business is all about. And we end up with 2 or 3 that we go, these are ones that we should look at further. And while that's happening, we also have a disruptive team that gets out there and looks at how can we kill this business by having a blank sheet of paper and coming up with a new model. So by the end of the second day, we can hang 2 or 3 or 4 models on the wall, and we can start to look at the pros and cons and see which is the best fit for us going forward. And it sounds easy. We'll just select that. I did some work with an insurance company it's now 6 years ago, and they were stuck between custom and technology, the know-how of which should drive this. And by the end of the second evening, 9 o'clock that night, we hadn't made a decision. There was a split vote as to what they were going to do. And I said, right, guys, go home, think about it, and we'll tackle this the next morning. And the next morning, guys said, no, what about this and that and the next thing? And I said, okay, it all makes good sense. So what do you guys think? Let's vote. And we had another split decision. And I said, guys, we need a decision. You can't be, 1 foot in one corner and 1 foot in another corner. And then one of the senior managers stood up and he said, guys, I thought about this thing, and I was for the user customer yesterday, but let me quickly tell you why I've changed my mind. And he put a business case forward, guys, that everyone else went, man, you've hit it on the head. This guy wasn't the CEO or the exco or whatever, but he put a business case forward that the guys went, yes, actually, you're making sense. We're going to go for this. And they decided to go on technology or intellectual property. And they've changed the way that they've approached the market. They've changed the game. They're winning business that their competitors are not even able to do. And it's amazing. It's amazing stuff to see how that's happening. And then on the third day, we take that decision and we start to put together what this profile will look like, what the objectives are from an offensive and defensive perspective. Where do we see ourselves in 5 years in terms of some numbers? And then we say, well, what is the action plan? What's our road to success? And we start to identify the things that we have to fix in the business, get them prioritized. And the ones that have a high priority issue, no more than normally 5 or 6 issues, we write a plan. And we assign an owner and contributors to that plan. And by when should that plan be done? We put a date. And off we go. And out of that 3-day session, we've put the what and the how together. And we've created belief in the organization. And it's about having the right individuals in that session, because it's them advocating. It's like the Civil War. Who was the first guy that they tried to shoot? The flag carrier. Because if we shot the flag carrier, there would be disarray because nobody knew where they were going. But it was all about, well, if the flag carrier gets shot, somebody else picks it up, and I become the flag carrier. And that's where we advocate for and be champions of the strategic plan as we move forward. And it's a phased approach. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but it is a phased approach as to how we mobilize the team. We go into the listen, explore, debate, decide. We lock in the plans and goals. We then, once that's done, we implement, share, and amend as we monitor through the execution phase. And at some point in time, we do a review as we go forward. but it's putting together this profile, our corporate vision, the time frame for the strategy, our driving force clearly defined, our business concept, which describes, which really is your mission, our 2 strategic skills, our scope of products, customers, and markets for the future. What is the strategy going to deliver from a size, growth, and return profit perspective, and a strategic filter that we can use to check every single decision that we make in our business, no matter how small or how important. We can use that filter to check, are we making the right decision to drive the strategy, and supported by the action plans. So the question is, can you afford not to take time out and do this and get your insurance policy in place? So any questions? I think I've said enough. I see Mike's made a comment. Powerful reminder to keep sharpening the saw and making sure that we do the right stuff. Anyone else want to make a comment?
Sorry, Greg, just very quickly, if I may.
Yes, Mike.
Often what inhibits progress in terms of bringing about the required change and implementing strategy is the polarization internally, and you alluded to it at one point in your presentation when you spoke about operational bias.
Yes.
That's, depending on the profile of the company concerned, this could be a huge problem. Any comments there? How does one overcome that, what you called operational bias? This can be most destructive, I guess.
Mike, absolutely. You raise a very, very important point. And that is where a external facilitator that doesn't have any connection with your business, or, you know, as a facilitator, I'm not going to get anything out of your business. I'm trying to help you. And it's our ability to manage the discussion and for us to read people, or to manage very, very difficult discussions. And one of the things that we find is that when people get polarized is because they weren't able to get the issue on the table. They weren't able to discuss something which they thought was important. And you know, our clients that are in the room can say to us, you know, we've had some very, very heated debates. In fact, I ran a session where one of our clients, where the 2 owners were at each other. It was a small financial services company, and the 2 owners were in, and the rest of the people were going, well, if these 2 guys can't sort their lives out, how are we going to add value to this thing? And I actually had to stop the session and facilitate a discussion between the 2 of them to get their issues on the table. And it was small things, but they had grown into these big monsters of you know, issues. And you know, it took me an hour to sort of talk to these guys, get the thing sorted out. And we went on with the process, and today those guys are flying. You cannot believe it. Was just let's get rid of the stuff, stop the polarization, and we start working together. And that's really where the strength of good facilitation comes in. Peter asked a question: what exists currently is sometimes the biggest inhibitor to what can be. What exists currently is sometimes the... Yeah, absolutely. You know, Peter, I agree with you there. It's our current... It's that current situation. It's the current, well, you know, we've got this baggage and we can't really get rid of it. Or there's somebody that it's their pet and they don't, you know, and you try and mess with that pet, you know, and then all hell breaks loose and so forth. But you've got to find a way in the discussion to be able to look at the pros and cons and to look at the strategic importance of those issues, and then to make a decision. Say, okay, guys, is this really something we want to go over? What are the facts? And then, you know, because facts are always the thing that shows. We always say, play the ball, not the person. And so if the facts show that this is a problem, we may say, yeah, okay, it is still a problem. And can we fix it? If we can't, then let's let it go, guys. Just let it go, and move forward and focus on areas. But I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thanks, Greg. I was actually just stating that sometimes when you need to start a new initiative, it's easier to start from scratch outside an existing business, just because the existing structures and baggage
Yes.
makes it difficult to change the business model.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we've seen that when businesses have developed their disruptive model. We worked with a company, and I can say they were automotive leather company. They manufactured the leather, the high quality leather for BMW, Mercedes, Range Rover, and those guys. And they really struggled. They just couldn't get this thing sorted out. Their quality was a problem. Their costs were high. Their wastage was unbelievable in terms of the proportion. They came up with a new model in terms of changing the way that they manufacture the product. Because the way that they were doing it is that they had 5 people in a sewing team, and each one guy would do the headrest, one guy would do the front seat, one the right front, left front, somebody else would do that. And so you had different stitching methods. And so BMW would just come and say, no, sorry, the quality is wrong. Look at this stitch versus that stitch. And they came up with this new model, new operating model, and they started the business outside of their business. And they had one person sew an entire car. So whatever was in there, whether it was the headrest, the side panels, the seats, doesn't matter, whatever was leather, that person sewed it. So you sorted out your quality, they sorted out wastage, because people were starting to be measured against their wastage, and all of a sudden, their whole business model changed. And when they put the thing together, they said, we'll know we're successful if we get an order that we were never, ever on the list to get the order. And it so happened that the CEO of BMW Germany phoned and said, we're flying, meet us at the airport tomorrow morning. You know, that's how the Germans work. And they collected them, and they knew exactly what was going on. Took them to their plant here in Longmeadow and here in Johannesburg. And the CEO said, I want to see what you guys are doing, because all of a sudden your quality is up, your costs are down, your wastage is down, and so forth. And they showed them, and they took them through. And they got back in the boardroom, had a cup of coffee, and then the CEO said, we have a project here for you for the new BMW 7 Series. And if you can tell me that this product will be done in this, we can sign the deal right now. And that's when they knew they had it. And they signed the deal. And then they morphed the rest of their business into the new model. And they just flew. And today they were bought out by a Canadian company in the automotive sector. So, yeah, you're quite right. You've got to sometimes do these things outside of what you're currently doing. Okay, anyone else? Frick? Our strategy is also dependent on how well we assess the environment, but then a compatible culture is required to get the strategy off the ground. Culture is the corporate immune system, and will push that which does not fit the current thinking and behavior. Leading the culture, shaping it towards what is strategically required becomes an imperative. You're 100% right, Frick. You've got to have that culture. You've got to create that winning culture through the belief that we're doing the right stuff, that people have been heard in the organization. It's not a top-down driven approach. And we saw that in the example that I gave to you of FNB. We had a lot of, when we started with the change management there, the naysayers, we've seen that, worn the T-shirt, all of that good stuff. But as it started happening and the people were rewarded and that news started to spread around the business, people going, wow, okay, this is different. This is how it's going to happen. So that change management, changing the culture and driving that is what I said right in the beginning. It's going to be one of our challenges in terms of how we're going to work in the future and this remote hybrid model and so forth. So we've really got to get our heads around that. I hope that's given you the support there, Frick. All right, anyone else? Any other comments? Okay, so what I'd like to just close off by this afternoon is a product that we are offering the market, which is called an optimal growth assessment. where we look at winning organizations, how they master and align their hierarchy of decisions to create extraordinary results. And it talks to that growth grid that I spoke about earlier. And it's a survey that we do internally. It's a very in-depth survey that we have with our clients. And it's about helping you to unlock the greater results and finding out where and why you're not performing optimally. It inspects the 5 C's at each level of the growth hierarchy. It helps to very quickly identify weaknesses or misalignment in your business, and then you able you to pinpoint the next steps to remove those obstacles to start getting to that total business growth side. We normally charge $80,000 for that survey. As I said, it's a very in-depth survey with your executive and senior team. But because you guys are here today, we are going to offer that to you at $40K. So 50% discount for us to do that and to get the results of that survey back to you, so you can start seeing from an operational business model perspective where you can start identifying things. So that is out there. So give me a shout, and we can take the discussion forward from that perspective. Okay, so I thought I would just put that out there, just to start helping you get your mind around some of these things as you start thinking about the future. If you are interested in actually going through the strategic thinking methodology, we can also discuss that. You've got my email address and contact details, so let's have a chat. But that's it. Thank you very much. I know I've gone a little bit over time, but I think the questions and the discussion was great, and I hope I've given you some food for thought in terms of how you need to approach your strategic thinking as you move forward. And on that note, I will say, let's call it an evening, and wish you all the best. Have a wonderful dinner. Enjoy the rest of your beverage, and we're looking forward to chat to you soon.